Welcome to the deep dive. Our whole goal here is to take sometimes complex research, pull out the really key insights, and just make them clear and, useful for you. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that, well, it really should be central to global discussions, freshwater value. But it seems to operate with this kind of institutional blindness. We're unpacking a paper that basically rewrites the value of a resource many don't even see.
That's right. We're digging into a fresh look at inland fisheries and their role in food security and livelihoods. It was published back in 2019 in Fish and Fisheries by Simon Funge Smith and Abigail Bennett.
Okay, so what's the core argument? What's the big idea this paper is trying to get across?
Well, the main point is that the world has just dramatically underestimated the value of freshwater fish. We're talking economically, socially, nutritionally, by billions of dollars and really millions of lives. The mission here was synthesizing recent data to really challenge this perception that, inland fisheries are kind of minor compared to the big marine ones. They wanted to quantify the contribution, provide a baseline, and show just how much we stand to lose as these freshwater ecosystems get degraded, which they are globally. Hashtag the invisible crisis.
Okay, let's start with that idea, the institutional blindness. The paper points out straight away these fisheries are underrepresented in policy. How deep does this go? Is it just an oversight or something more systemic?
Oh, it's definitely institutionalized. And this is where the paper really throws down a challenge. They look right at the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs.
A global roadmap, basically.
Exactly. So take SDG 14, life below water. Sounds relevant, right?
Sure.
But it only focuses on oceans, seas, marine resources. Completely leaves out freshwater.
Wow, okay.
Then you've got SDG 15, life on land. That one talks about protecting habitats. Good goal, obviously. But that focus can unintentionally sideline the millions who actually depend on harvesting fish from those very habitats for food, for income.
So the framework itself, the big UN plan, and it has this built-in blind spot for freshwater life being used by people.
That's pretty much it. And this filters down. It affects research funding, what scholars focus on. Most attention goes to marine stuff, or when it is freshwater, it's about irrigation, city water supplies, big hydro dams.
The engineering side.
Right. And those big infrastructure talks often just steamroll ahead without really calculating the cost to the fisheries that are already there, already vital.
So if the big international systems, the academics, are overlooking it, what does that actually mean for the people on the ground, the ones relying on these fish day to day?
It means huge knowledge gaps persist. If policymakers don't even know the real scale, the true economic value, how can they make informed decisions? It's impossible.
Right.
And these inland fisheries, they're foundational for so many vulnerable groups, socially, economically, nutritionally. This lack of data means their needs, their livelihoods, just get ignored when there's competition for that water, whether it's for power or farms. Hashtag revealing the hidden harvest.
Which brings us right to the big technical problem this paper tackles. How do you count this stuff? It's hard enough tracking big ocean trawlers, but how do you count, like, every part-time fisher on a small lake or someone fishing in a rice paddy? How did they get past the official stats, which you said are flawed?
Yeah, the official numbers are the starting problem. The
Hmm.
FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, they reported about 11.9 million tons in 2017. But it's widely known they underreport inland catch. Badly.
Why? Just poor monitoring.
That's a big part of it. Plus, subsistence catches people fishing just for their family, and recreational catches often go completely unrecorded.
Okay, so how do you find the real number then, if the fishers aren't reporting it?
This is where they got clever. They used what's called a fishery-independent approach. Instead of asking fishers what they caught, they looked at what households consumed.
Ah, okay, from the other end.
Exactly. They used data from Household Income and Expenditure Surveys, HIES data. Big institutions like the World Bank collect this stuff globally for economic analysis. But Funge Smith and Bennett repurposed it. They estimated the catch based on how much fish households said they consumed across 42 different countries. These countries represent, like, over half the global inland catch. So it's a neat way around the reporting errors by looking at demand, not just the supply side.
That is smart, using existing economic data to kind of sneak up on the fisheries number. So what did it show? What was the hidden harvest?
The results were pretty stunning, actually. Using this HIES model, they estimated the global inland catch back in 2008 was around 16.6 million tons.
Okay, and the official number was?
Well, compare that to the official reports at the time. It suggests the official catch might have been underreported by 39%, almost 40%.
Wow.
Yeah, and other estimates they reviewed suggested the real underreporting gap is probably somewhere between 21% and maybe even 51%.
That's That's not a small error margin. If you're running a country planning food security and you think you have, say, 60% of the fish resource you actually have, that messes up everything. Infrastructure planning, malnutrition programs.
Completely. It creates huge policy vulnerabilities. And they also looked at trends over time. While the total global catch has gone up kind of linearly, about 2.3% a year.
Okay, seems positive.
Globally, yes. But when you look country by country, it's really variable. About 37 countries are increasing their catch, sure. But crucially, 28 countries show decreasing trends. And these aren't minor places. We're talking parts of the Mekong Basin, parts of the Amazon, areas where these fisheries are incredibly important. The resource is shrinking where it's often needed most. Hashtag tag the multifaceted importance.
Okay, let's shift to the human side. The tonnage is bigger than we thought. But why are these fisheries so critical beyond just calories? Especially, in developing countries.
Right. Their importance is deeply social and nutritional. Look at the numbers. 95% of the world's inland catch comes from developing countries. And get this, 43% comes from what are called low-income food deficit countries, LIFDCs, places really struggling with food security.
So it's concentrated where it matters most.
Absolutely. The paper calculated that back in 2015, the inland catch provided enough animal protein to cover the entire dietary needs of at least 158 million people. But honestly, the protein is only part of the story. The real value might be in the micronutrients.
Ah, right. Not just protein, but vitamins, minerals, like a natural supplement.
Exactly. It's an accessible pharmacy, like you said. These fish provide vital stuff, vitamin A, D, B vitamins, minerals like calcium, iron, zinc. These are crucial for fighting really common malnutrition problems like childhood stunting or health issues like rickets.
And is there anything specific about these fish?
Yes, particularly the small fish species. Often they're eaten whole bones, organs, everything. This massively boosts calcium intake, for instance. And studies have directly linked eating these small, whole fish to better health outcomes, especially for kids and pregnant women. You get the whole nutritional package.
Okay, so it's a nutritional powerhouse. What about livelihoods? Who's doing this fishing? What's their situation?
Well, typically, inland fishing is small scale, often seasonal. It doesn't require huge amounts of capital to get started. That makes it a really important safety net.
A safety net. How so?
For the poor, for people without land, or folks who need extra income seasonally, it fits alongside farming, for example, like fishing in rice fields or canals during certain times of year. The data suggests almost 17 million people involved in the fishing itself, and maybe over 8 million more in post-harvest work, like processing and selling.
And I remember the outline mentioned a gender aspect here. Women play a big role, but maybe an overlooked one?
Hugely overlooked, often. While estimates suggest women are maybe 20% of the actual fishers, their role in processing is massive. In some African countries, women make up nearly 70%, 69% of the processing sector.
Wow.
Yeah. But despite doing so much of the work, cultural norms often create barriers. Access to credit, owning boats, or gear. It keeps their economic contributions somewhat invisible, even though it's substantial.
Okay, nutrition, livelihoods. Let's talk brass tacks. Money. The economic value. The paper put the market use value, the MUV, at $24 billion, which sounds big. But this is where things get kind of weird, right?
It is a big number, absolutely.
Yeah.
That $24 billion for the fish caught and sold, that's roughly 24% of the first sale value of all marine fisheries globally, which actually suggests inland fish might fetch higher prices per kilo, probably due to local demand.
Okay, but there's a but coming.
There's a huge but. That's just the fish people eat or sell.
Yeah.
Then you have the non-market use value, the NMUV. This is the value from recreational inland fishing. Think spending on fishing rods, licenses, boats, travel guides.
Right, the hobby fishing side. You flagged this number earlier and it sounded disproportionate. What is the NMUV estimate?
You're ready for this. The estimate for that non-market use value, the recreational side, is somewhere between $64.5 billion and $78.7 billion US dollars.
Wait, 64 to almost 80 billion? That's like 3 times the value of the fish actually caught for food, mostly by poor people.
More than double, yeah. Mostly concentrated in North America and Europe.
So let me just get this straight. The money spent, largely in wealthy countries, on fishing as a leisure activity dwarfs the entire market value of the fish that are a critical food source for millions in developing nations.
That's the paradox the data reveals. It's pretty stark. So the total combined value of the whole sector market plus non-market is estimated somewhere between $108 billion and $122 billion. But that huge recreational figure in richer countries really skews where the perceived value and probably the policy attention lies. Hashtag threats and future directions.
Okay, so we have this incredibly valuable sector, $100 billion plus, vital for nutrition, yet weirdly skewed economically, and it's vulnerable. What are the biggest threats lining up against these inland fisheries?
The threats are coming from everywhere, unfortunately. There's the obvious competition for the water itself, big hydro dams, massive irrigation projects, water being diverted for cities.
Right, using the water for other things.
Then there's pollution, runoff from farms, industrial waste.
Mm.
It all ends up in the rivers and lakes.
Hmm.
And of course, climate change is altering water temperatures, flow patterns.
Habitats themselves.
That's the fundamental crisis, really. Freshwater ecosystems, rivers, lakes, wetlands are among the most threatened on the planet. The paper cites this figure. Only 37% of rivers longer than 1,000 kilometers are still free-flowing along their entire length.
Only 37%. Wow. We've dammed or diverted almost two-thirds of the world's major rivers.
Essentially, yes, the physical integrity of the habitat is just being fragmented, altered, annihilated in some cases.
And those big infrastructure projects, especially dams, must have immediate, devastating effects on fisheries. What does the paper say about policy solutions? How do we protect this?
The big push is for what they call intersectorality. Basically, policymakers need to stop looking at things in silos. You can't just plan for the energy sector or the agriculture sector in isolation.
Okay, but isn't that easier said than done? Intersectorality sounds great, but doesn't it just lead to fights and gridlock? How does a government realistically balance, say, guaranteed electricity from a new dam against a potential loss of fish that's maybe harder to quantify?
That's the crux of the problem. But not considering the fishery leads to far worse outcomes. The paper gives a really stark example. The dams built in the Senegal River Basin.
What happened there?
They were built primarily for irrigation and power, without really factoring in the downstream impacts on the fishery. The result, an estimated 90% reduction in the fish catch downstream.
90%. That's
Yeah.
that's wiping out a food source and an economy overnight.
Pretty much. It's catastrophic. So to avoid that kind of disaster, the paper argues future research has to keep using these complementary methods, like the HIES data, to really put a number on the costs, financial, nutritional, ecological, before these big projects get the green light.
Makes sense. Are there any smaller scale, maybe quicker wins suggested, things that could help right now?
Definitely. A really practical area is tackling post-harvest losses. Right now, depending on the place and the methods, anywhere from 13% up to maybe 45% of the fish caught can be lost before it even gets eaten or sold. Spoilage, poor handling.
45% loss. That's huge waste.
It is. So relatively simple interventions, things like introducing better solar drying techniques, improving handling and storage, maybe basic processing closer to the source. These could make a massive difference in food availability and income pretty quickly without needing giant infrastructure investments. Hashtag tag outro.
So we've covered a lot. After this deep dive, thinking about this hidden harvest, the skewed value, what's the big takeaway for us? For you listening as an informed citizen or maybe someone involved in policy?
I think the clearest message from this synthesized evidence is that we urgently need to change the narrative. This idea that inland fisheries are just minor or secondary to marine fisheries, it's just wrong. They are economically massive, over $100 billion in total value, and maybe more importantly, they're socially irreplaceable. They provide affordable, micronutrient-rich food, especially for the world's most vulnerable people, often where there just aren't other good options.
Right.
The paper really puts it back on the inland fishery sector itself, challenging them to actively demonstrate, to quantify this vital contribution they make to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. They need to force their way into the conversation, into the planning for infrastructure and development.
Make the invisible visible. Thank you. That was a fascinating look at a really crucial and, yeah, often overlooked topic.
Happy to discuss it. And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on. If these inland fisheries are fundamentally such an efficient way to produce protein, environmentally speaking, they mostly just rely on healthy, flowing water. What are the true hidden costs we're signing up for? The environmental costs, the nutritional costs, when we improve massive projects like dams without properly valuing the free, natural, self-renewing food source we're potentially destroying.